Our guest today is Jan Moström, President of Euromines. Welcome to Bulgaria and welcome to Green Transition Forum.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel the atmosphere here
I think
during the event?
It's good. I talked to some colleagues here before and saying, this is a very huge event. It's a lot of speakers, it's a lot of guests, but it's very well organized, which means that you can both listening, you can participate in the discussions, but also meet colleagues and friends and discuss. So I think it's a very good event.
What role does mining play in securing the raw materials Europe needs for its green and digital transition?
But mining, I would say, is the key. Europe can't be self-sufficient regarding metals and minerals, but it's important to have a resilient value chain that will be the foundation for the green transition, because that's all about electrification. And if we do not have access to these materials, or we have the dependence as we have today, it will be problematic. We see we have trade wars, restriction of these materials. So I would say it's utmost important that we have a responsible mining industry within Europe, that we have resilient value chain for parts of these materials.
What would be the economic consequences if Europe fails to secure reliable access to those critical materials?
I would say it's dangerous. The first thing is that what we see now as a result of the ongoing discussions between, for example, United States and China, is that we have export restrictions of these materials, which has an impact on manufacturers in Europe. But it also dangerous from a dependence perspective, because I would guess that some of these nations that are exporting these materials, they really don't want to export these materials. They want to export goods. For example, China, they do not want to export rare earth elements. They want to export VEs, which means that it will be competitive to European automotive industry. So I would say it will have a huge both financial, economical impact, but also from a defense perspective. A lot of these materials is used by the defense industry. And if we do not have a competitive defense industry in Europe, we will rely on import. That will also be a very security problem. So I would say it's really important.
It's been 2 years after the Critical Raw Materials Act, and now we have Resource EU in place. Is Europe actually delivering on its strategic autonomy ambitions, or we are still mostly at policy level?
Yeah, I would say yes. It's the first very positive step. First the Critical Raw Material Act, and now the Resource EU. And it's important just for a few years to recognize and saying that we are so depending on industry, and industry is so depending on two important things, and that is affordable energy and raw materials. But I would say it's too little and it goes very slowly. So I would appreciate highly if we could push this faster. And at the end of the day, what I guess is really important for EU and for politicians and both in Brussels and in the member states is to create the trust with all the citizens within the EU that understand the importance and understand and get trust in the environmental permit processes, because it's a lot about that. It's so complicated today to get the environmental permit to start operate. And if you do not have that, or you do not have the social acceptance locally, then you can't open up the mines. So yes, it's a good first step, but it needs to be substantially more.
How can we balance imports and domestic mining?
Domestic mining can't ensure that we will be self-sufficient regarding these materials. We have to trade, but if you do not have domestic mining to have something to trade with, then you are totally in hands of those who export these materials to you. So I think the most important thing is to define how much of these materials do we need to have domestic mining so we can have a balance to import and trade. At the end of the day, I hope that we can slowly go back to the world we have 10, 15 years ago when we have a globalization and free trade. But that is gone, and we have to admit and recognize that. And that means that we really have to ensure that we have parts of this so important value chain by domestic mining in place.
Many companies argue that the regulations are too slow, too complex in Europe. How serious is this problem in the mining sector?
Yeah, but it's a huge problem, the legislation as it is. But, you know, this legislation as we have is developed under a very long time period. And it's developed when we realized or saw that we have time to do all this. We have some sort of continuity in everything. But now we have a lot of changes that put an expectations that everything has to go so much faster. We have electrification, climate change, we have the defense industry, we have also AI that needs a lot of electricity, and it has to go much faster. And the problem is that we have a legislation that are developed on a long time, which we have to change quite fast. And that is the major challenge both on EU level but also on member state levels, how to change that process and that type of legislation so we have a coherent legislation and a non-coherent legislation.
Euromines is working with its members to promote more responsible mining across Europe. What are the concrete actions that you are taking to make this happen in practice?
What I think is the most important part is that Euromines members actually represent that and responsible mining. And we also have two committees that is especially focused on this. It's the environmental committee and the policy committee, where all the members can exchange experience how to conduct responsible mining. And the end of the day, it's so important that all members of Euromines can represent these types of responsible mining, because that's the foundation for building trust to get the social acceptance, so we can continue to change the foundation for mining within Europe, because we have to do that. Hence what we have talked about earlier, the importance of domestic mining. But what's important for Euromines members, all the members, is really to represent in all aspects responsible mining and change experience within the committees working with these issues.
If there is one message you would like European policymakers to understand about the mining sector and the critical raw materials, what would it be?
I think the important message will be we need to decrease, bureaucracy. We have to focus on the environmental impact on mining and decrease that, and try to get away from administration and bureaucracy, because that is what's hamper a lot of mining activities, both ongoing operations and mines to come.
Looking ahead 10 years, what do you think success would look like for Europe in terms of critical raw materials production and resources?
I hope in 10 years' time that we really have understood how dependent we are on import and that we have to do something about it. That we have a substantially increased focus in not decrease the environmental expectations on mining, but set focus on efficient permitting processes, which will both attract financing for mining, but also attract exploration activities, so that we in 10 years' time hopefully will be close to meet the target that was originally set for 2030. I think it will take those 10 years to reach those, which I really hope.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for this conversation.
Thank you.